To everyone Thank you to everyone who is joining today's presentation in Westchester University's Sustainability Research and Practice Seminar by Zoom, as I am doing today, or in person, as I am glad to hear a good number of you are doing. My name is Bradley Flam. I'm the director of the Office of Sustainability at the university, and we have been honored to co-present this series for this is now our ninth year with the support of the Office for Research and Sponsored Programs and the Sustainability Council's Scholarly and Creative Activities Committee. This is the 12th presentation this semester. We have one more coming 2 weeks from today. We're taking a break next week because of the Thanksgiving break. But please join us 2 weeks from today for the final presentation in the series. For those of you in person, I'm pretty sure there are hard copies of the entire semester's program. And for those of you on Zoom, if you'd like to know more about the full series, go to the Office of Sustainability's homepage. So now, without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Ginneh Akbar.
Thank you. Thank you. Can everybody see me and or hear me, or do we need to switch, or is everybody good? Okay, great. Thank you for having me. I am Ginneh Akbar. I'm the program director and chair of the Graduate Social Work Department. I don't know how I ended up with that job. It was a mistake, and I've been in it for 6 years. But yeah, so it's been a wild ride. The title of this presentation is Story Systems and Solutions, but as I was sort of thinking about preparing it, and I know that we don't have a ton of time, what I decided to do was just sort of talk to you about an elective that I created in our department that is on environmental justice and green social work. And talk to you a little bit about how I came upon developing that elective and what that elective looked like. And then we can sort of maybe have some time for questions or, discussion or conversation. I just want to first just welcome you in all the ways that you show up, however you are, whoever you are, welcome and thank you for coming. And of course, I want to start with a land acknowledgement as well, just acknowledging that we are not on our own land. In social work, one of the most basic primary theories that we use is systems theory or person and environment theory, right? And so in social work, we tend to look at, if you see anybody who has ever taken a class with me or a lecture with me or a presentation will probably see this because it explains so much of what our work does. And the way we look at this is we look at ourselves or the client in the middle, and then we're surrounded by all these systems. And how we understand the person and environment system is that it's not a one-way direction, right? We are influenced by the systems, and also we influence the systems. And so this is one of the most sort of basic theories that we use when I'm talking to students about how to engage in practice. Understand that your client or yourself is in the middle, and then you have the family around them, which is one system, friends, you might have work, you might have school, education, and then it goes all the way up to like policies and what the sort of like current maybe economic or government structures are how they're functioning, and they will impact how your client experiences their life in all these other systems. One of the things that we don't talk a lot about that I always try to remind students of is the chrono system, which is you see on this outer layer. And the chrono system is the dimension of time as we are looking at these systems. And so the way we understand that is if you grow up, say, during the time of the civil rights movement, or if you grow up in a time of war, right? Or if you grow up in a time of mass immigration, how you experience your systems might be different than other times, right? So how a child or a parent or a worker is experiencing life in 2025 is very different from what the systems and the economic structure and everything look like in, say, 1920 or something like that, right? And so the era that we're in influences how we experience life, how we experience work, how we experience our communities, our families, et cetera. And that's important because if we think about the era that we're in now, I think a lot about these things that some of these concepts that I'm going to talk about in this presentation, right? Like mass consumerism, globalism, time of like very much increased technology, which is good and bad, right? It allows us to sort of understand things all across the world in ways that we might not have been able to or were not able to 50 years ago. Just a vast sort of exchange of information and ideas, all these things which can be great. There are also some other sides of this sort of like consumerism and globalism and how we're experiencing the world today. But the thing about this and about understanding the environment and when we're talking about person, environment, and social work, we're generally talking about the social environment, right? So our relationships, that's what we're talking about, the relationships with our family, with our community, with our work, with our government, et cetera. And so a colleague and I, almost 10 years ago, wrote a paper talking about how social work needs to sort of expand the definition of environment to not just the social environment, but also to the physical environment. How can we look at the ways our clients interact with their physical environment? And so I think that's very important because a lot of my social work students didn't really understand or see the connection between sustainability, environmental justice, sort of green issues, right, and social work practice. And so I'm showing this because this is one of the first slides that I use when I open the environmental justice class. And I use it as sort of a tool to get students to understand and have some connection with what their environment is like, right? So I'll ask them, thinking about your social environment, thinking about your physical environment. How do you get your food? How far do you have to travel to get your food, right? Is it fresh? Can you get a variety of foods? Can you get fruits and vegetables? Are there areas in your neighborhood where when you're not able to get fresh foods or not able to get variety? How do socioeconomic factors play into that, right? If you're looking at your community, are there pieces of your community that have great grocery stores and great access to food and then other ones that don't have it? How about your water? You think about your water, do you just take for granted that every day when you wake up and you turn on your shower, you turn on your faucet, that it will be fresh, that it will be clean, that you can cook with it, that you can eat with it, that you can feed it to your baby? Do you know about where your water source comes from? Are you worried about contamination issues in your area, in your neighborhood, in your community? And if you're not, what does that say about the privilege that you have to not worry about that? Because we know that a large majority of the world's population does have to worry about contaminated water sources. What about the air you breathe, right? Can you open your windows and let air in? What about the noise, right? If you are living in a place where it's very loud, how does that impact you? How does that impact your family? How does that impact your environment? What about litter? One of the things students don't think about is like, for example, like municipal trash pickup, right? Can you expect that every Monday at 8 o'clock, your trash collectors will come and take your trash or your recycling? Some areas even have compost pickup. Does your community have that? And think about why or why not. It might not have that. Some areas, I live in Philadelphia and Mount Airy. It's a pretty mixed socioeconomic status, but I can count on my trash collectors coming every week at the same time. There's other places not too far from me, 20 minutes, 30 minutes away, maybe even less than that, where they can't count on that, right? Where there's trash left, where there's people dump tires, old car parts, whatever, right? So thinking about why that is and why is it in the same city with the same connection to trash pickup, why some areas, able to count on that and some not. Think about, are there green spaces in your environment, right? Are there places where you can go out and play, or children can go out and play, where you can walk? Are there lights in your neighborhood? Are there parks? Are there areas where your community can gather and feel safe, right? If there are parks, are they lit well? Are they kept safe? Are they clean? Do the green spaces, if you have them, contribute to your well-being, or some places have parks and community centers and spaces, but they aren't well kept. And so they are considered more of a hazard than they are, support in the neighborhood. Thinking about weather and how weather impacts your neighborhood, right? Like, can you count on snow and ice removal right away? When it rains, do you live in a place where it floods? We have to worry about maybe your basement flooding every single time. If you thinking about like if whether your streets are paved nicely, right? Can you take a walk around the neighborhood? What if you have a disability and you have to use a device or something to walk, a wheelchair or walker, and your streets aren't paved well, and you live in a place where there's a lot of flooding or where the trash isn't picked up or where the snow isn't removed, right? So that is an ability justice issue, right? Thinking about how it impacts your ability to engage with your neighborhood and your space in a safe way. Um, Thinking about let's see. Oh, even with the weather, right? Whether there's shade in the neighborhoods, how the sun or the rain or all the sort of like different seasons impact how you experience your community. I remember I grew up in like Mount Airy, Chestnut Hill in Philadelphia, which is a place that's pretty known to have like trees and nice lawns and places like and things like that. And people would come. I went to school in an area where people came from all over the city to go to school. And so lots of my friends were from different parts of the city. And so they'd come to my neighborhood and be like, oh my God, you guys have trees. And that's something that I just never even thought about, right? That they just lived in a place where there was lots of concrete. So think about that. And then the last thing I encourage them to think about is like, think about your ability to choose where you live, right? Some people sort of don't have the choice, right? You might say, I really enjoy city living, and then you can go to a place where you can, you don't necessarily maybe need a car. Maybe there's not a lot of green spaces, but you enjoy the life that you can engage in the city. Some people might say, I really enjoy more suburban life. I want more green spaces. I want to move to a place that has more green spaces, right? Some people don't have a choice, right? And so I'm going to come back to this a lot, but what the main thing that I was trying to get students to understand is that all these pieces of justice, of oppression, of understanding how power and privilege work are connected, right? Like you cannot be concerned with racism and sexism and transphobia and homophobia and not be concerned with environmental justice because they're so inextricably linked all together that we have to sort of understand how they all work together. So I taught the course during a winter session. So it was a condensed course. We usually do it as a 5-day intensive, 9 to 5. It changed a little bit over the course of the past few years. Sometimes I would do parts of it in person. Sometimes it would be synchronous on Zoom, and then we'd have some asynchronous pieces that students would sort of work on their own to do group projects or presentations or things like that. But some of the content that we focused on in the class was environmental justice and racism, sustainability, climate change and climate injustice, global agriculture, food apartheid, fast fashion, the ethics of consumerism and capitalism, the zero waste movement. We looked a lot at what are the local connections to all these things so that students could really have an understanding of how this impacts your community. Like this is not something that happens far away in another state, in another country across the world, right? There are things that are happening in our community that we should be concerned with. We looked at green gentrification and green ceiling, looked at power and privilege in the environmental justice movements, right? So like, what does it mean? Like veganism, right? And how that impacts different people. And are there some differences between vegans of color and white vegans? And how does green gentrification, the green ceiling impact the environmental justice movements? For example, when sort of local grassroots movements get taken over by big universities or big businesses that have a lot of money and then sort of usurp the work that local folks are doing. And then finally, the whole point of this all was to look at what is our application to practice, right? As a social worker, a social work instructor, my job is to teach students how to be good practitioners, good clinicians. And so overall, we kept coming back to what is the application to your practice? What is the application to your practice? How does this show up with your clients? How does this show up in your internships? All of our students do 2 internships in their graduate program, one their first year and one their second year. They're a year long. And so I encourage them to bring the connections between the theory and practice and how these issues show up in their internships. One of my very favorite things about this was because it was sort of run like a seminar, and I am not an expert in this. I'm sort of someone who got an interest in this several years ago. I wanted to bring in a lot of experts who had a lot of focus on on these issues. And so we had, so this is just a highlight of some of the ones we've had, some of the folks we've had over the past few years. Dr. Sabrina Gonzalez, who was one of my colleagues from my doctoral program. She's a social worker, grew up in Philly. She realized there was a gap in her knowledge in working in Indigenous communities that she didn't know anything about. So she left Philly. She'd moved to Florida for a while and said, I want to go work with Indigenous communities, and moved to New Mexico and got a job working with Puebla in New Mexico. And so we had her come, and Professor Biani Perez, who's another one of our adjuncts. She's also a social worker and a clinician. And so they came to talk about Indigenous and ancestral connections to the land, right? What does it mean to be connected to the land in a way that many of us may not have experienced that way, right? And so Sabrina was able to really, it's always really interesting to have her come because the way that you're practicing on a reservation is so much more community focused than the way students in Philadelphia practice, right? And so things that we look at as, oh, professionalism or things like that, it's just not the same thing. It's like, we're here, we're helping the community, we're all connected to this land, so let's make this better for everybody, right? There's less of a silo between who we are and who our clients are, right? It's like we're all in this together. And so students really appreciate that that lens. We had Dr. Bradley Lamb come, which was great. I loved how he talked about all the things that Westchester is doing. The students really had no idea about anything regarding sustainability with Westchester, so that was great. We have Dr. Brianna Parsons, who is a lecturer in the veterinary medicine school and at the University of Pennsylvania, and executive director of the Gambia Goat Dairy Farm. And she came to talk about sustainable agriculture and her goat dairy project in Gambia. Our hope is that we're going to be able to maybe at some point do a study abroad in Gambia with her. We do have some study abroads in our department, so we just haven't been able to work it out, and she's gone like most of the year, so trying to connect with her can be a little bit difficult. But every year she comes and talks about her goat dairy farm and the sustainable agriculture program, which is wonderful. Bria Hamilton, I randomly met this girl on a Facebook group about, I don't even remember what the Facebook group was, but she like mentioned on a post that she was a cartographer who dealt with like race issues and class issues. And so I was like, that sounds cool. And I was like, can I email you? She's like, yeah. She gave me her information. And she's a counter cartographer and urbanist. And she's based in Toronto, out of Canada. And basically, she came to talk about how there's a lot of sort of racism and classism in cartography. And she works in communities to have community members participate in building maps that represent their culture and their community. It was like the coolest thing I'd ever heard of. I'm like, I want to be a counter cartographer. Sign me up for that. It was really awesome. We had Rashida Ali Campbell come. She's the executive director of a program called Love Loving Love. She is a citizen who saw that there are some environmental justice issues out of West Philadelphia. And so she was really interested in, urban earthships, which are like sort of fully sustainable structures that use recycled materials and have their own sort of like water system, like a little ecosystem that you build. And so she had spent some time, I think maybe in Colorado, and saw this and wanted to bring one to West Philadelphia. So she got some land in West Philly and was in the process of building a urban earthship, which is really cool. And she also came to talk about what are the environmental justice issues in West Philadelphia, a lot of things related to to access to food and food apartheid, things like that. And then I had a colleague she actually works at the Department of Human Services, which is like the child welfare organization. But I had her come. Her name is Nyambi Alexander. I had her come because she builds urban gardens in her community. She has one like right in front of her house, and she works with Bartram Gardens, which is a garden in Philadelphia, and does a lot of work with them. So she came to also talk about just the idea of stepping outside of your everyday social work role. And even if you can't find ways to incorporate environmental justice issues in your direct practice, like child welfare, where she's like investigating child abuse and neglect, what are ways in your personal life that you can be connected to the land, be connected to agriculture, be connected to sustainability? So she has a big garden in her house. She changed one of her like rooms in her house into like a, what do you call it, like a greenhouse. Yeah, so she grows plants, she makes like bombs, she sells them, and it was just like really wonderful. We wanted to do an in-person activity with her, but we just couldn't quite organize it, so maybe for the next one. So she came to talk about urban community gardens. So as you can see, just a variety of different ways that we wanted students to engage and see the connection to practice and to the systems that they're participating in. So some of the assignments, this was one of like my favorite pieces of the program. We had a lot of assignments that sort of aim to get students to like I said, make the connection to their personal life and sustainability and environmental justice, but also to practice. So a couple of things that we did was having them explore what is your ecological footprint, what is your water footprint, and what is your fashion footprint. These are all online calculators. So they all looked those up, did those, and then did a discussion board post about them. I had them do a sustainability check, sort of looking at what they have in their home, what things are in terms of like their trash use, different things like that, and how they could maybe change some things or sort of just really just assess, right? We did a lot of case studies. I did a unit on North Carolina and the hog waste and pig farming in North Carolina and how that impacts the community. There's a really great short documentary on, I think it's on Vox or Vice, one of those, if you're interested, that it talks a lot about it. It gave an overall picture of the hog farm industry, some ways that they're looking to make it more agriculturally sound and sustainable, but also their very large impact on the community in North Carolina. And it's really interesting too, I think, and this was a good point about this, and I think sort of a lesson overall, right? So in this particular community, lots of people are working in the hog farming industry, right? And so it's really hard to say we don't want this in our community when a lot of people depend on it for their livelihood, right? So they're like, let's look at it. Let's see if there are ways that we could make this better. But in the meantime, there's a lot of negative things happening to the community as well, right? So I think that's sort of a thing to think about too, is that it's not a either or, it's a both and, right? Like we may need this in our community in order for people to make money and to live, and also look at the ways that it's really hurting the community, and is there a way we can come together and make both of those things not so harmful. So we did that. We looked at Flint, Michigan, looked at Camden, New Jersey. We also looked at Chester and the incinerator there and the impact of the incinerator there. Lots of discussion board posts. We did some movie reviews. The Story of Plastics is great. I love The Story of Stuff as well. It really talks about consumerism and how a lot of the things that we don't use in the next 6 months. Excuse me. We have a neighborhood assessment assignment, that I'll talk a little bit about. I had students to pick a neighborhood, either where they currently live, where they grew up, or where their practice is. Look at the assignment, look at the neighborhood, and use Policy Map and get GIS data on different categories, right? To see like what is the impact of what the population looks like and how the population interacts with the environment there. And so they did a neighborhood assessment, which was really great. But an advocacy and awareness project, students had to basically pick an environmental issue and either write a government official or create like a social media campaign to make awareness of this issue. So some of them did infographics, some of them did like an Instagram campaign. That was really, really cool and interesting as well. We had a behavior change assignment, which I'll talk a little bit more about. I'm going to show you an example of that. And then we had, in this last time I taught the class, we had a field learning. We had a field trip to the Ecology of Fashion exhibit at the Academy of Natural Sciences, which was really fun. So the Academy of Natural Sciences had this exhibit basically talking about fast fashion and how that impacts the world. We had students come, the department was able to pay for it. We went to the exhibit and really took a look at all the things that are related to fast fashion. This was the first time I did a larger unit on fashion, but it was really interesting. It was great. Students really enjoyed it. Talked about waste, talked about fossil fuels, talked about like how much water it takes to make denim. And it was a really just fun, sort of like engaging, you know, activity to get students into the city to look at, this museum. It was really cool. Any questions before I keep going? Just want to check in with anybody, comments, thoughts? Anybody online? Okay. I forgot that I
Professor
wanted to.
Akbar?
Yes,
Oh,
sure.
sorry, just quick question. It looks like you were able to be in person for some of the course, but it's 5 very intense days. How
It
much of
is.
that was in person and how much of it was online? And
Yeah,
how did it
so
affect the learning?
yeah. So we broke it into like a morning segment and an afternoon segment. So we might have did like Monday online, Monday morning online, Monday morning online, break, afternoon online, Tuesday morning online, break, maybe asynchronous for a couple hours to do some of the assignments or work on the assignments together as your group. So basically it was like the 4 days broken up into morning and evening. Because we had a lot of speakers, it was just really natural way to have breaks built in, which was great. So we'd have like speaker for an hour and a half, 15-minute break, another speaker, hour break, like that. And then the last day we did our field trip. Yeah. Do you have a question? No, just moving here. Okay, cool. Um, so for I forgot to send you, can I send it to you so that you could maybe, all right, so I'll send it now. But for our behavior change assignment, we had, oh, shucks, I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. You're good.
For our behavior change assignment, we had lots of different options that students could choose from. And I wanted to show you an example of it. That's what I'm trying to find now.
What's your email? It's CLAMBARD.
And oh, there
And
we are.
yep, you got it.
Okay. So I'm sending her an example of our behavior change assignment. So for the behavior change assignment, students were able to, this was sort of like the culmination, the last assignment that they did. They picked a behavior that they wanted to focus on, and then they would do a presentation on it. Let's see.
go.
All right, great. You can go back to Canva though for now.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry about that, y'all. I forgot all about that.
All good. Let me get us back to Canva. All right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, yeah.
And then you can just move it around
I'll try
to
figure
get
out.
to
Yeah,
it.
I'll call
You
you
should be
for it,
good.
so they had a choice of different behavior change assignments that they could choose from. One of them, so because the class was winter intensive, they didn't have a lot of time to do this. Probably if I did this during a,
I just should be able to just move the big thing at the top, so click and drag it.
okay. Oops.
Yeah, if you just
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me.
here, I'll put it down here.
Okay.
Make it easier. There you go. Oh, there you go.
Okay. If I had done this during the regular semester, and I actually am gonna, because this is only ever run during the winter session. Excuse me, I am gonna run it eventually, probably maybe next academic year for the full 14 weeks. If I'd done it for the full 14 weeks, I would have given them more time to try to do a behavior change assignment. And I tell them, you're not getting graded on how well you do this, right? You're getting graded on what was the process? What was this like to try to eliminate something or change something in your life, right? So they had a choice of a bunch of different things, and they also could bring something to me that they said, maybe I want to try this. So here were some of the options. They could do a no buy or no thrift. I told them to try to do 3 to 5 days since we just had a short period of time. So for the next week, basically don't buy anything new, only purchase things that are thrifted or secondhand, only repair or repurpose or upcycle items, and try not to spend any money on anything new. They're also, one of the things that they could do was an outfit challenge. I had a friend who works in the fashion industry, maybe about 10 years ago. She did a one outfit, one dress, 30 days, right? So she wore the same dress for 30 days and just tried to style it in different ways. So an outfit challenge where you're just going to wear the same thing for a week and try to style it in different ways. Another choice was sustainable food, where they could reduce or eliminate animal protein, or eliminate processed or genetically modified foods, or to only eat local for a week and see if they were able to do that. Another one was waste production. So thinking about if they could strive to be zero waste for a week and what that looked like for them. Another one was reducing their energy or carbon footprint, unplug appliances, use less electricity, maybe try to use public transportation or carpool instead of driving your car, or only making sure that if you were going to use your car, it wasn't only you in the car, but there were other people in the car. So, or ride your bike or walk or whatever instead of driving. And another one was chemical detox or safer home. Look at your cosmetics, look at your cleaning products, look at the things that you have in your home and see if there are ways that you can reduce or eliminate the more toxic products in your home. There's even a website that we found where they could input different products in their home and sort of assess the toxicity level of them and see whether they were safe to use in the home. And so maybe use more organic or more homemade products in your life. And so students would choose these, or they would come up with their other ones. I had them just run them by me and let me know which one they wanted to do. So I wanted to give you an example of one of the ones that a student did. This student agreed to let me show this. What she did was try not to buy plastic for 5 days. So she chose to avoid plastic because she knows the damage that it causes to environment. And she realized that she was using a lot of plastic. So she's like, can I try to do this? I asked them for what their expectations were with the assignment. Did you think you'd be able to do this? What do you think your connection is? Do you even realize how much plastic you use, right? Like, what do you think will be the hardest thing or most difficult thing about this next 3 to 5, 7 days or whatever that you're doing? I asked him to analyze the issues of power and privilege in their process of doing this assignment, right? And she did a really great job with this, right? So she was saying, like, I have amenities such as money for food and a car. This allowed her to make this assignment a little bit easier for her. Also, she didn't have children, right? It was only herself. She didn't have a partner. She was like, I don't have to worry about packing a baby's lunch. I don't have to worry about bottles. I don't have to worry about, all these different things that someone who has maybe has a family or a larger family might have to consider. She lives in a neighborhood that has access to good food, that has farmers markets, that has stores, that has a general sense of environmentalism. So she was able to access things fresh foods, things that didn't have, that didn't need have containers or whatever, things like that. She has previous experience shopping in bulk. She's single. She doesn't need to feed anyone for herself. She's physically able to get to the grocery store. I thought this was really great too. She was considering ableism, right? Like she didn't have any barriers to being able to get up and get out and drive to the farmer's market or bike to the farmer's market or even carry items, right? Like it can be heavy if you are on your own and trying to carry things. So for day one, she went to the Clark Mark Farmers Market in the winter. She said it's extensive, lots of options and vendors. She said it's easy to avoid plastic there compared to traditional grocery store. Most of the vendors sell their items without any packaging. She attempted to buy cheese from a farm stand, but it came in plastic. She had to decline it. They sold different kind of cheese wrapped in paper. So she switched cheeses. Surprised at how hesitant she was to ask the vendor to switch her purchase. Thinking about how like it's outside of your social norm to like refuse packaging, right? And so that I think that was also a good lesson too, like putting pressure on vendors, right, to have more options that are more sustainable. So I thought that was great as well. She said day two, she needed to shop for dry goods and other items that she wasn't able to get at the farmer's market. She was going to be in Mount Airy, so she planned to go to Weaver's Way. She's familiar with Weaver's Way. It's an advantage and to physically and emotionally be comfortable trying something new, right? So she's familiar with all these things too. That's another thing, right? Like if you're somebody that this is brand new to, all this is going to feel very overwhelming. If you don't shop at farmers markets, if you don't buy in bulk, if you don't have containers, all that's going to feel very overwhelming. But she had some level of comfort and connection to this already. She prepared by bringing all her jars and bottles. She had to wake up earlier than normal, then to prepare the jars. Another thing, right? Like there's a privilege in that as well, that you don't have to wake up and get kids out or get whatever, right? Like maybe you don't have a far commute. Maybe, you have the extra time to be able to consider how to make this part of your life. They had paper bags at the co-op for bulk items that she had forgotten her containers. She was concerned about buying tofu because the brand she buys in a hard plastic. She found another brand. She wasn't sure that the package could be downcycled, even though it said it can. She checked the recycling website. She couldn't, but things that she wanted to buy, but she couldn't buy yogurt, veggie sausage, cheddar cheese, her favorite cereal, hummus, and milk, right? So think about like what your dedication is, or not even your dedication, like your ease in life, right? It's not, and I talk about this a lot in my classes too. Like it takes work and time to be anti-oppressive. And when I talk about that, I mean in all the senses, right? Like anti-oppressive related to environmental justice, regarding race, regarding sexism, regarding homophobia. It's not easy to unlearn the things that are comfortable to us. Like we all live a very privileged and comfortable life, and to say I'm going to step outside of that and not have my favorite veggie sausage and cheese, like it's kind of a big deal to say, like, I'm willing to sacrifice these things that feel good and comfortable for me for the greater good. I want to offer a little caveat there because I also teach my students to punch up and not down, right? And so what I mean by that is we will never be perfect consumers, right? There's no ethical consumption under capitalism. And so we can make small changes, we can make big changes, but we're one person and we can only do what we can do. The real change has to come from a larger scale and larger system. The companies are much more responsible for polluting the environment, for the trash in the oceans, for the microplastics than individuals are, right? And so Coca-Cola can make a much bigger change than any of us can, right? Even if we all eliminated plastic out of our life, Coca-Cola could do that and eliminate millions of plastic, right? And so I try to sort of like keep that in mind when I'm talking to students about like, great, like let's think about behavior change, but that's also punch up to the folks who have the real power and the real resources to make the larger scale changes, right? We're not going to be perfect consumers, and that's okay. You're not a bad person because you want to get your favorite cereal, right? She stopped at Wawa. She bought a hoagie wrapped in paper. She didn't buy chips. She brought her own mug. The cashier was really nice. She said it was great. She felt great. So go Wawa, right? Day 3, she had to buy pet supplies, right? That's another thing. I had a meltdown once I started to learn about this. And I was like, oh my God, animals are not green. Like so much waste, so many plastic bags, so much dog food, so many things, right? And I've a whole zoo in my house, so I'm not passing judgment by any means. Last night I had 4 dogs in my house. Only 2 were mine. I have 2 cats. It's just crazy. So, but just thinking about if you have animals, like what that waste looks like as well, right? So she had to buy supplies for her pets. She has cats. She found a dry cat food brand online that's made from bugs, and whatever. Day 4, she didn't buy anything. She went to school and work all day. It's rare to have a day that she didn't buy anything. She was resisting the urge to shop online. Day 5, she started off her day with coffee, but ran out of cream. Buying half and half would mean she had to buy plastic. So she drank her coffee with no cream. So she loves cream, and she was like all upset about that. But she said all this made her think about her purchasing habits and understanding like what we buy, how we use it, and what our options are. Her observations: plastic is everywhere. Her fridge and her cupboards look really different when she started to avoid plastic. The location that she thought would be the hardest to avoid plastic, which was Wawa, was actually the easiest. And Weaver's Way was great, but it also was a setup for able-bodied people because they had extremely narrow aisles and no carts for customers. So you have to be able to physically move through the space in order to do it. Regardless of our intentions, there are some pieces that come in plastic. Zero waste tips, saying no when someone's giving you something that you don't want. She had to incorporate that a lot as she was doing the challenge. I don't like the inconveniencing people. And some of these practices do require an inconvenience. And so I think this is one of my favorite things too, right? Like when you see zero waste online, they're beautiful. They're all these mason jars. They're labeled beautifully. They're really cute. They're pretty. It looks all aesthetic and everything. And so she's like, she had to sort of get used that her house was not going to look like this, right? But it was going to look like this. It was going to look like random hodgepodge of jars and boxes and whatever. She wasn't going to get the beautiful aesthetic zero waste look. Messy, imperfect, a little chaotic, still involves plastic, et cetera, et cetera. So you get where I'm going with this assignment. I'm paying attention to time, so I wanted to. But anyway, I love her project because it's a really great example of all, like she really engaged in all the thought process that I wanted students to do, right? Like, how does your body feel? How do you feel having to give up some of the things that you want? How does it feel to have to like go in places that are uncomfortable and ask for things and do things a little bit differently? I thought she did a really great job with that. The main thing that I have students to do, like I said, was always incorporating this into how do you incorporate these things into your current practice. And so social workers, we do lots of different things, and there's a range of jobs that social workers can have. So there's a range of ways that you can think about this. But I wanted students to think about all the ways that they could maybe start to slowly incorporate these different sort of environmental justice pieces into their work, right? Consider where sessions are held. Can you be at a place that has natural light or windows? Can it be outside? Can there be plants or flowers in the room? Excuse me. Considering the human animal dynamic, I've like taken my cats to sessions at places where I worked. Like I had a lady I was working with, excuse me. She was in prison for 35 years. She loved animals. She never got to have a pet of her own. She was recently released. I took my cats in my sessions because she loved cats. I had an agency that was that supported that, right? I've had people bring dogs to sessions. I do a lot of teletherapy now. I have a small private practice. I'm like, where's your puppy? Bring him on camera. Does that make you feel better? Like, let's do it. I love dogs. Let's see it, right? Thinking about all those ways that we can partner with local agencies, looking for environmental factors in the intake process. Those questions that I asked at the beginning with all the pictures, how can we start to ask clients those questions about what their experience of their physical environment is like? I don't think most agencies ask people like, is your water clean, right? Like, do you have regular trash pickup? Is it safe to walk outside and walk a block in your neighborhood? It doesn't come up unless there's an issue with it that like makes them end up in social services, right? So it's not something that we are doing preventive work around. It's always reactive. So like, how can we make sure that neighborhoods are supporting families and communities in a way that's preventive? Looking at research, what is the impact of nature, of green spaces on behavior change and well-being? Yeah, understanding policies, right? Like that's the macro piece. Looking at our elected officials putting pressure on them. Social work has lobbyists, right? So like we can get lobbyists to go and support environmental issues. That's a lot of students, a lot of people get into social work because they want to do macro work, working one-on-one with clients, but we do have a fair number of students who are working in macro placements or internships or placements or looking for jobs in macro placements. So if you want to be involved in policy work, there is a place for environmental policy work as well. Another thing is really important, I think, like as you could see with my guest speakers, partnering with other disciplines that are doing the similar work, right? Making sure, seeing what other folks are doing and trying to work with them and doing some interprofessional collaboration, which is great as well. And so, like I said, the whole point of all of this is that all oppression is connected. I want students to really understand that environmental injustice exacerbates inequities across all the systems of development, right? Like that all those interlocking circles of systems that I talked about in the very beginning are all impacted by environmental justice and all impacted by the physical environment and the world that we live in. And that was really the point that I tried to push across, and also that our guest speakers sort of emphasized as well. The last thing that I ended with was this concept of ecological grief. And so how do we end with hope and not ecological grief? When I started to do this research, I was getting in the weeds. I told you I was like freaking out about the dogs. I started composting. I found a compost place online. I'm like, great, I'm going to start composting. Then they delivered the compost bin, and the compost bin was plastic. Then I freaked out about the plastic compost. I'm like, what's going on? Right. I had to like really be like, all right, Ginneh, like let's step back. I was like, oh my, you want to I'm like, I have too many things. I'm a consumer, I'm like a slave to consumerism. I love clothes. I love fashion. I'm like going through my clothes. I can't get rid of them because they're going to end up in, landfill. Like, it's just like a whole, like, I was like, okay, I have to really, because you can just get so overwhelmed with how awful everything is, right? So I have really had to like encourage students to like take a step back, take a deep breath, and like think about this ecological grief, right? Like we can be good stewards of the earth, and we don't have to be hard on ourselves, and we can take it slow, and we can make small changes. We can share the information and knowledge, and sorry. We can share the information and knowledge, and we can like learn to incorporate these things in our lives slowly. Because we should still try to feel really hopeful, right? One of the things I try to really remind myself is that we are on this earth for a very small period of time, and the earth has been here for a very long time, right? We may not have been the best stewards in this generation of earth, right? And in this I was going to say episode, but in this like series of of humans, like we might not have done a great job, but the earth is going to take care of itself, right? We'll be long gone, and the earth will rejuvenate, and the earth will come back in a way and start all over, even when we're not here. But we should still try to do the best that we can to keep to protect what we can while we're still here. And that is it. I know I'm like right at time, but if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer. It looks like there's some stuff in the chat. Try to see. Oh, thanks for sharing. Oh, Molly's from my department. Great, yeah. Thank you. Any questions or comments or thoughts or anything? No. Thank you all for coming. This was great to talk about. I always love talking about this. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Ginneh, if I can
Please.
just say a big thank you to you.
Of course.
We are at very close to
Yes.
12:50, and we often pause here because some people do have to get to another class quickly.
Yeah.
But if you do have time for a few questions,
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
I know I do, and perhaps some others will think of some. I, I, if I can start, I'm just so impressed with how you took what seems like a fairly short amount of time, 5 days, and covered so much good
Yeah.
material. It looks like you linked it to the field of social work and the
Yeah.
practice that your students are preparing for. but it also seems like this is a framework
Mhm.
that students from any discipline on our campus could benefit from. I'm wondering if this is the type of class that would be open to students not in the social work program. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I can imagine, professors from other disciplines sort of piggybacking or working with you to maybe spend the last day making those connections to accounting or nursing
Yeah, oh my
or
gosh, that sounds
English
amazing.
literature or other fields. I'm just so impressed with what you put together. I see so many others who would appreciate it too.
Yeah, thank you. I think that because it's in winter session, I'm always, and I know there's so many cool people that do a lot of this work on campus. Like Megan Heckert, I went to actually high school with her, and I know she does some work around environmental. And I'm like, I call Megan, but it's like during winter break, and I'm like, I don't want to bother people. But when I think that when I have the opportunity to do it in the regular semester, I will have the opportunity to be able to bring more folks in from different disciplines, which I think will be great. And also that might be a time where we could open it up to, to other departments, which would be wonderful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Yeah.
Thank you. You got to come back for sure, right? You're gonna come back.
Well, I was going to say, I'd love to take the class as
Oh
one of your
yeah.
students.
Please, absolutely. Yeah, it's really great. And I want to eventually hopefully maybe connect with Brianna and take some students to the Gambia, which I think would be just like amazing. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Thank you. Your question? Yeah.
Do you find that it's easier for the students to make connections and ask them like how to apply to your practice? Because you have a long list. But
Yeah.
like
So here's what I think that I do. I do a little teaser. We all the students have to take a social work and families class. And in the social work and families class, there's an environmental justice week. So I go to all the environmental justice week classes and do like a teaser of this. And they're all like, oh, And so that's actually how I get a lot of students to take the elective because they're like, I never realized this, And so but it's such a hole in our curriculum. And I like want to look at ways that we can incorporate this more, not only in just that class and these elective, but seeing how it impacts everybody, right? Like having a good, safe world impacts everybody. But students are very shocked by it. Like I think there's a sort of like a stigma or like a thing around environmental justice that it's like tree hugger types, right? Like doesn't have anything to do with me. And so once folks start to make the connections like, oh, this actually has to do with everybody, it's like a light bulb goes off and it's really great. I love it. Yeah. All right. Other questions? All right. Thank you again.
thank you so much.
Sure.
Right.
Oh, I do have, so one of my little weird projects over the winter break was to make adult coloring books. I don't know where this came from, but I made an environmental justice one. Now, just a caveat, some of it is AI, which I know is terrible for the environment, so don't be mad at me, but I am teaching everybody, so just, don't shoot the messenger. But if you want a coloring book, I bought some of my copies of it.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Callie, can you grab one for me too?
Sure, yeah, I'll grab one to the office for us to share. Thanks everybody for being online.
All right.
All right, see you all
Thank you
later.
again.